Today is April 24th, 2014. This is Brent Björkman, the director of the Kentucky Folklife program. Continuing our work on the Ranger Lore project for the Library of Congress and the American Folklife Center. Part of looking at occupational folk culture of the United States, and we are looking at the multifaceted working lives of park rangers. I've been doing this for most of the morning into the afternoon, and have a guest here today. David, could you say your name and your job title and position?
Yeah. I'm David Wyrick. I'm Chief of Interpretation at Mammoth Cave National Park.
David, can you tell me a little bit about, I've been asking people kind of their origin story, how they got connected to the job or to parks in general. The answers vary, and they're all very interesting. So if you could give me yours, that would be great.
Well, I grew up in Carlsbad, New Mexico. My family was very outdoors type people. My dad used to take us, we'd call it out riding the roads. We'd go driving at night, anytime during the day, just seeing what kind of animals we could find. And my mom was kind of a rock hound and loved geology, and she would take us out and talk about geology. And so that was kind of one of our interests, one of the things that we got into and sparked my interest. We lived close to Carlsbad Caverns, so we went into that park quite a bit, and around the Guadalupe Mountains area, Guadalupe Mountains National Park. So that started me kind of early. My grandfather was a forest ranger for the state of Oklahoma, and every summer our vacations went to go see Grandpa, and he had the coolest job in the world. It was
You went with him while he was working?
Yeah, we go. He lived out at a tower. He had a tower, and so he lived out. His nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and so he lived on top of this mountain with his tower and a creek below, and just it was outhouse and just, it was just backwoods, and it was just, and I always admired what he did, and I guess I kind of thought that, I looked at him as a park ranger, not a forest ranger, I guess. Felt like a park, I guess. And I was one of those lucky ones, I think, that always knew what they wanted to do.
Wow. So then, some people talk about this happened, or military service happened, or I was into geology and this happened. So how did you start to formulate yourself with a trajectory?
Well, I think ever since I can remember, I said that I wanted to be a park ranger. So I think even in grade school. That was always my goal. And when I graduated high school, that I was going to find a college that had that taught you what you needed to learn to be a park ranger. And so I ended up with a degree from Eastern Washington University in Parks Administration. And so, of course, everybody, you change around and you kind of lose sight of your goals sometimes, and that happened to me at times, but then I, really always knew what I wanted to be and came back to the Park Service. So.
Did you start in the Park Service after the degree, or you
No, I taught scuba diving out of Portland, Oregon, and worked for a shop there, and we'd do checkout dives in the San Juan Islands and Seattle area and stuff like that. So I got into scuba diving and did that for a while, probably almost 2 years, I guess, and decided, actually, my next job from there was I worked on a forest tower. So I got a summer job working for the Forest Service in Lincoln National Forest, where Smokey Bear's from, and worked on a tower for the summer, and from there went right straight to Carlsbad Caverns, and worked there for a little while there. So
So you went back to the home, near the home place.
Mm-hmm. And Lincoln National Forest in New Mexico was really a couple hours from my home. So then they offered me a seasonal job at Carlsbad Caverns, and I started working there.
Wow. Were you guiding trips? Were you doing interpretation?
Yeah, I was doing interpretation. I was doing tours, bat flight talks in the evenings, and just, it was a guide job, and then finished, after my season, finished that up.
What was your first week like at this, when you first started doing interpretive work after the tower? I'm just curious about people's first forays into doing these
My first impression there was maybe surprising because I was thinking, boy, I picked the wrong career. The way things were set up schedule-wise there was you would spend about 6 hours, probably about 6 hours on the average, in the cave itself, in the darkness. And I was more of a surface. I mean, I needed the sunlight, you know, and it was cold, damp. You were standing around the way they did tours you did then. You pretty much, it was, a lot of it was, we didn't have a lot of the wild caving tours that they have now and the different guided tours that we do now. It was self-guided. People went through the big room. You roved around that, then you worked your way to the Queen's Chamber, and you would stand there in one spot for about an hour, maybe just a little bit to walk, and then you'd move over to the King's Palace, and you'd stay in that spot. And it got cold. You weren't moving around much. People treat a cave when they're in it, like on a self-guided tour like that, like it's a church. They're very quiet. They're not, you know, walking around in awe, so they really don't have many questions. And then you slowly work your way out, and you wonder what the weather is like outside. You just and it was just, by the end of the day, you're just so ready to talk to people or do something different. Not that I didn't talk to people there. It was just that it was not what I expected, I guess. And so it was hard, I thought, and kind of disappointing. And that's one of the reasons I got misguided again.
For just a period of time, and you got into another line of work?
Right. And so it took me a while. I did a lot of things. I taught gymnastics for 15 years. And I was, that's helped me get through college. I was a gymnast too. And so I taught that and realized that wasn't a big career thing. So worked my way to Maryland, and that's when I was doing the construction and gymnastics, and I was, of course, I was a construction superintendent for, I probably built about 250 homes, and I don't know, 3-4 subdivisions in Maryland, DC area, in Virginia. Did some commercial construction, and kind of did still kind of weekends did the gymnastics thing and did that stuff, and then decided that I was missing a lot of my life, and applied for a job as a ranger on the National Mall, and started back again and never looked back.
That's great. Well, maybe that was an important time that you were able to work at the park in that particular context, and not maybe in that initial context of the cave and
Yeah, it was just, and I realized that it was just, it wasn't the resource itself. It was how I was working in the resource, my schedule, and it wasn't the way I liked it, you know, I guess. And
were your parks the DC and the East Coast parks that you worked at? Can you tell us a little bit about those? And was that a different kind of scheduling thing and more conducive to your sensibility?
Right, well, you're outside. And the National Mall, I guess interpretation, I'm a people person. You have to be a people person. And I love talking to people. And I think interpreters in some ways are kind of hams. But you need that interaction. I think interpreters learn as much as from the people they interact with as what they hope they're teaching people, educating people. But so I really enjoyed it. DC was just, the commute really stunk, but the interaction and the things going on and the people I met and I think the stories of that, the history I was able to learn, or I had to learn, and of some of our iconic presidents and stuff was just really phenomenal for me. It was stirring. It was it just, I guess, made you very proud of the accomplishments that you get through learning about your forefathers and stuff. So that really, I think that had a huge impression on me at that time. It was just, I have so much to learn and I have so much to tell.
I can just imagine. I'm thinking about the interpretive things I've heard about here is, could you speak to me? I've had people speak to me here about the mentorship. Maybe you're starting by, you're trailing a cave tour, and maybe it's not called mentorship, but how did you have certain people? Don't have to name names, but when you were starting back and you were in DC and feeling really good about things, did you have coworkers? And can you tell me about those interactions with those coworkers? Because
well, yeah, we had the coworkers. There were just a variety of personalities. There were about 50 people on rangers on the National Mall that you work with, and so. Like any other job, you have some that are, you just kind of look up to, and they know their stuff. They do very well, great interpreters, and you also learn that you can't do what they do exactly. You have to get your own style. You have to learn, put your personality into it. You got to learn, do the things that you love, and then you become a good interpreter, because you maybe like the way people do things, and but you can't mimic them. But you can also have them as mentors as far as helping you learn your style. I had supervisors, really good supervisors. I had some that weren't so good, but supervisors that you knew cared and would help you with ways to improve, to train, to move your career ahead, and make your contacts, help you make your contacts and those kind of things. So there was some really I think my first initial, I really feel like that was my first initial, the National Mall was my first initial introduction to what it really means to be a park ranger. Not that I didn't love the caverns, because I got a chance to go back there and make some changes that I remembered from my career, my first entrance on there, and hopefully make it a better place. But there was those things that I really disliked, and I knew that a lot of people disliked, of spending so much time in the cave and not really getting out in the sunlight and having that change and stuff. I felt like I was able to make some of those changes and contribute to that. So it's I got to go back to a wonderful resource and hopefully help to make it a little better place to work too.
Yeah, I think about you were speaking about people you've watched or you admire their content maybe. How do you, developing your own style, did the park make room for you? I know it's important here. Did the park then in DC give you time to be able to go and research? You mentioned ways to train to become better. Is part of that finding doing your own research and looking up things, and is that part of it?
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. I mean, the job is, as a park ranger, is what you make of it. It really is. I mean, because you can do as much as you want. And fortunately, there was enough staff to develop, if you wanted to develop just about any type of program you wanted, at that time there was enough staff to be able to, for you to do the research. I mean, there was always things going on. When I was there, it was the 50th anniversary of I remember one particular program was 50th anniversary of the Jefferson Memorial, and so we had a huge program going on there, and we were able to spend our time going to the Library of Congress, researching history about it, getting pictures, doing whatever we needed to do to develop programs, and we had a big weekend-long celebration and with different programs. The post office had its own stamp there. President Clinton spoke at it, and it was so. There's always things like that going on. It seems like that you have a chance to be a part of, and there's so many different subjects from the different wars, the Korean, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial of the Vietnam War. You're studying about Lincoln, Jefferson, Washington, Pierre L'Enfant, just the whole plan of the city. We used to give, at times I gave tours of the city, and Arlington Cemetery, and those kind of things. So there's just a multitude of whatever you want to learn. It's really up to you. So it's.
And if you're engaging and engageable,
right.
You could write your own ticket as far as interpretation within the
realm of course of within the theme or the mission of that site, so it was an open book because there's so many subjects.
Yeah. And then you went back to Carlsbad for a little while, and
I was back in Carlsbad. Well, from the National Mall I went to Fort Sumter, and so I was in Charleston, South Carolina area, and worked at Fort Sumter, and that was a really, I forgot. From the National Mall I went to Rock Creek Park, which was within the city of DC, and I was there for a year working at the old stone house in Georgetown, and which was an interesting site, and it was one of the, I guess it's the oldest building in the Georgetown area or in DC area. And it was a good example of a carpenter's house. It was just an interesting story. Then it was one of those stories where the Park Service, I guess it was the lore that this was an old tavern that Pierre L'Enfant and George Washington planned the city of Washington from. And later on, the Park Service found out and that's what they acquired. They acquired the property, and after extensive research, found out that really it wasn't. But it was a good example of a carpenter's house in DC, and just a beautiful little setting. So I guess that kind of was an interesting story in itself. But then I went from there to Fort Sumter National Monument in Charleston, South Carolina, and did learned history about the Civil War, talked a lot about the Civil War.
I'm thinking about you. You have this new position as Chief of Interpretation here, relatively a couple months in, and you made reference to going back and making some changes in Carlsbad. Was this movement to Rock Creek and then to Fort Sumner? Were you working your way into a new GS kind of position, and did you have some? I don't know if it's a climbing the ladder. I mean, is there like you had newer duties or different?
Right. Yeah. When I started on the National Mall, I was a GS4, temporary park ranger. There was at a time really, to be honest with what happened was one 4th of July. It's kind of, you work 16 hours. You have a 16-hour day on the 4th of July in DC. And after that, the Park Service had temporary employees. I was a temporary employee, not to exceed 4 years. And there was a maintenance man named Hudson his last name was Hudson, and sorry I forget his first name, but he had a heart attack after the 4th of July, and he was a temporary employee, and he had no benefits. So it spurred Congress to tell. It was kind of like the beginning, part of the beginning of Ranger careers, but it spurred Congress, and they created the Hudson Bill, and which required them to, they required the National Mall to hire 25 permanent people, and that's how I got permanent. That I don't forget. It's hard to get to be a park ranger. You know, it's a very, very desired position, and it's, you know, I realized, you know, I waited 4.5 years before I could get permanent, and so I don't forget. I don't think someone, when they first find out about their permanency as a park ranger, I don't think they forget that, and I don't forget that it was, you know, part of it is because somebody died. And so that's very important to me to remember. So back to the question of progression. I know I'm kind of all over the place.
No, that's good.
But the progression, yeah, I moved from Rock Creek Park, and when I moved to Rock Creek Park, I got to be a site manager. My title wasn't site manager, but I was the site manager of this site and took care of it myself, and so that gave me a lot more responsibility. From there, when I moved to Fort Sumter, I had the opportunity to become a lead ranger and do some hiring, and, you know, just kind of work my way into a little bit of supervision and that type of thing. And working also as managing a site at Charles Pinckney National Historic Site as part of the Fort Sumter group. So I gained that experience. I think each time it's gaining experience. You have to look at what the job is, and you know, if it's moving you up that career path. When I moved to Carlsbad Caverns this second time, I went there as a lateral, as a GS9. By this time I'd become a GS9. And there was a lateral for a GS9. Of course, it was going back home, which was kind of desirable for me at the time. And then I knew that there was an opening for a GS11 supervisor there, that it would happen. And my thought was, well, if I get there and somehow my work ethic and put a face to the person and the resume, that it might help me. And fortunately it worked out. And so after about 3 months I was a supervisor at the caverns. And then and it was a GS11 supervisor there. I moved from that as a lateral to a chief of interpretation at Grant Coors Ranch National Historic Site in Montana. So this was a progression to be a chief, more responsibility, maybe not more pay, but just more responsibility, and to help me along in my career. And that's from that transition, it was a chief, which was a GS12 at Natchez National Historical Park. So with more responsibility, I was chief there. I was chief of interpretation and cultural resources. So, chief, and so I had, it's a mainly cultural park, but I also had natural resources I had to take care of too. So that was a big change in responsibility and just also a promotion. And from there to here at Mammoth Cave National Park to a GS13 level, and of course a huge responsibility with the number of staff here.
What is the staff difference between Natchez and here?
Well, at Natchez, my staff was about 14. I think I had about 14 people, and responsibility of directly and indirectly supervising 14 people. But also with the cultural resource added onto it, with all that comes with compliance and managing a resource as well as the interpreters. So it was really a much larger responsibility than just being a supervisor kind of at the caverns. Even though I had at the caverns, I had probably 50 employees, and overall here at Mammoth Cave, it's over 100. So it's I guess it's the level of money and number of people that you supervise that is the difference between the different parks.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that story you just told about the Hudsonville.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just shows how much you all care about people and comrades. And do you have anything to talk about your? I mean, that's just such a poignant piece that you don't, like you said, you'll never forget that. And I've had a lot of those types of stories about intimacy with colleagues and just this wonderful kind of way. Do you have anything you'd want to share about particular people who just made your life really great, or you worked as a team, or?
I think that's why I like it. I know I'm going to like it here.
What was your first indicator that, I mean, other than on paper you thought this would be a great challenge, but when you got here on site, what made you?
Well, it was before I got here. People reached out to me, and just willing to help, with the transition, the move, whatever you need, I'll take you. I'll take your wife around, show her around. I was just all these kinds of offers like this that I think these are good people, and just the welcoming I had, and it was kind of it reminds me a lot of my time at the caverns too, because it's really, there's a whole lot of parallels in how a cave at the cavern you have to work together. When you're in a park like this, You have to work together. You have to pull together. There's so many challenges. There's so many, emergencies that may come up with carryouts, things that you have to pull together to do. That takes sometimes, people from all divisions in the park together to pull together to make something happen. The Caverns was a family like that. I mean, you had a whole bunch of people together, and they had to, it was a huge job to coordinate it, and people knew that, and people know how difficult it is for, like the operations supervisor to coordinate everything that goes on in a place like this. And so everybody seems to be willing to pitch in and do their job, no questions, do the best they can, and just get it done when you need it. They pull together in a place like this, and I saw that immediately.
Yeah. It is an amazing place. I've been asking people about stewardship concepts, personal concepts of stewardship. Everything points to a deep feeling for what you're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
What does a ranger do, and how are they stewards, or in what way?
Well, I guess I've been fortunate enough to work in natural and historical areas, historical parks, and I find that people are passionate about both, and sometimes they don't. The reason that they're a historian, the reason they're passionate about it, as far as an interpreter goes, I see, is because they're there. They know they're there to remind people of what we've done good, what we've done bad. Where we're going to from here, and how important it is to remember what our country has done, or what people, the different sacrifices, or where we're going, so that we don't, to remember those things, so that we don't make the same mistakes again, but that we continue to grow and move forward. So I think people just get really passionate about that, and the history part of it. Same thing in natural areas, in natural parks. We've made some mistakes. The Park Service has made mistakes in trying to as stewards. We all do. And then we're learning and we're growing as we go along, by research, by just getting out in the resource and trying things, and then you look back and say, well, did that really work? So you're constantly looking for better ways to do things. And so that rangers are passionate about leaving the place for future generations, and in good shape, sometimes hopefully in better shape. And so I think to me, that's the takeaway. That's why rangers do it, is because they realize what they are there for, and they're looking at the big picture, but they're also realizing what their little part in it is, that it does contribute to that whole mission of preservation and conservation for the general public. I mean, it's and future generations. So people are passionate. Rangers are passionate about it for different reasons, but I think it all boils down to that. That it's we're here for the public, and we're here for the resource. Whether it's historical resource, or whether it's a natural resource.
Mm-hmm. And you get so much of both here.
Yeah, and Here, it's got a combination of everything.
What are your hopes for? I mean, it's really great to be with you and learn about your trajectory, and you're very new here, and you have aspirations. You know, what are you hoping? What are you hoping for your?
Well, I've still got a lot to learn. I've got to learn. Yeah, I've got to learn the resource myself, and I just, you know, I want to see us move. Continue. You know, I want to see the park continue to move forward with ways that we can connect to the visitors and connect to the public, our partners, our community, all the communities around, in ways that they understand and they buy into that stewardship and help us actually learn new ways to better manage our resource and to tell our stories. I mean, I think that's, to me, that's with the history part of it here, to help tell the stories so that we have them, you know, because this park is different in the way that it's not just, like you said, the natural resource. It's got all that history of the people here that is, a lot of it's still out there that we don't know about. And I hope to, you know, as I'm here, that, you know, we gain some more knowledge. We also learn better ways to connect with the people and the visitors and be able to tell some of those stories.